A really important part that I haven't covered yet is scrolling, which is going to look like this. We have a canvas, and on this one, we have custom scroll bars that go up and down or left and right. Right now, this really doesn't look too impressive, but what we eventually can do with this is something like this, where we can create a frame that is scrollable. Although for now, we're going to keep it simple, and let's start with some theory. In tkinter, there are 3 widgets that can be scrolled. We have canvas, text, and treeview. The canvas is the most useful one, since this one can display other widgets. We will cover that in the next part. But for now, let's get started with the basics. I am importing tkinter, I am setting up a window, and I'm running main loop. The result is going to look like this. On this, I want to start by creating a canvas. This I want to store in a variable that I call canvas, and canvas we create with tk.canvas. In here, we need the parent or the master, which is going to be window. And just so we can see it, I want to set a background with a white color. This canvas I want to pack right away. So canvas.pack, I'm going to set expand to true and fill to both. Now if I run this, we can see the entire background is white. I guess for now, I can change the background to red. That is a bit easier to see. We can definitely tell the canvas covers the entire window. But that's not actually what we want. Instead, what I want is that the canvas is larger than the window. For that, we need one more argument, and that is called scroll region. This creates a larger canvas that we can use for scrolling. For this, we need 4 arguments. We need the left, the top, the right, and the bottom. The left and the top are basically always 0 and 0. That makes it very easy to navigate. For the right, I want to set 2000, and for the bottom, I want to have 5000. For comparison here, the window itself is 600 by 400 pixels, so the canvas now is going to be quite a bit larger. Although, if I run the entire thing, we can't see any kind of difference. First of all, we only have a red color for the canvas right now, which isn't particularly helpful. To actually see some scrolling, we need content for the canvas. In my case, I want to, the most important one, create a line. This line is supposed to go from the top left all the way to the bottom right, which means when we are creating it, I want this to start at 0 and 0 for the left and the top. The right is going to be 2000 and the bottom is going to be 5000. With that, we have the exact same numbers that we have used here. Although for a line, the first 2 are the starting position and the last 2 are the end position. Other than that, I want to fill this one with a color. Let's go with green. And then I also want to set the width so it's a bit easier to see. Let's go with 10. Now if I run this one, we have a line. Although we can only see one part of the line, but that we can work on. Besides the line, I also want to create a couple of rectangles. For that, I'm going to use a for loop. Let's say for I in range, and I want to create 100 rectangles. To create a rectangle, I need canvas and create underscore rectangle. This one is going to work kind of like the line. For each rectangle, we have to specify a left, a top, a right side, and a bottom side. Besides that, I also want to have a fill, which is supposed to be a color, which means we have to create 5 different variables. We need a left side, we need a top side, we need a right side, we need a bottom, and we need a color. All of these numbers are actually fairly simple, but since I do want to have random numbers, I need to import 2 things. I want from random import randint and choice. Randint is going to give me the positions, so left, top, right, and bottom. Basically, all I want to do is randint from 0 to 2000, or from 0 all the way to the right. For the top, I want to have randint with 0 and 5000, so all the way from the top to the bottom. For the right side, I want to have the left side plus a random amount. Let's say randint with 10 and I think 500 is what I went with. Finally, for the bottom, I want to have the top plus randint 10 and 500. For the color, I want to use choice. And choice needs a tuple with a couple of color arguments. And here I want red, I want to have green. I want to have blue. I also want to use yellow. And let's go with orange. With that, I can run the entire thing. And now we can see at least parts of some rectangles. And with that, I can also change the background of this canvas to white. And we can still see things. Or at least we can see the line for now. We didn't get lucky to see any kind of rectangle, but they are definitely there. If I run this again, now we can see them. With that, we can cover the actually important part. And that is a scroll bar. A scroll bar in tkinter is just another widget. We create this with ttk and scroll bar. This one needs a parent. Let's go with window. And I also want to store all of this inside of a variable. Let's call it scroll bar. For the scroll bar, we need one argument right away that you basically always want to pass in, and that is orient. For this one, you have horizontal or you have vertical. Horizontal is the default one, but I want this to be vertical. With that covered, I want to place this thing right away. And place was deliberate because I want to use the place method. This is basically what you always want to use for a scroll bar, because this allows you to set relative x to 1 and relative y to 0 with a relative height of 1 and an anchor of northeast. That way, this scroll bar is always on the right side of the window. So I can run this now, and on the right side, we have a scroll bar. Although right now, it doesn't do anything. Now, this scroll bar works kind of like a slider. What that means in practice is we can give it one more argument that is called command. This command wants to have a function. You could pass a normal function in here, but most of the time you want to do one specific thing. You want to get a scrollable widget, like the canvas, and then get the yView method. This yView method is basically designed to work with a scroll bar. If I run this now, you can't really see any difference on the scroll bar. But if I move the scroll bar, we now have some scrolling, which is a good start. To actually see the progress inside of the scroll bar, we want to have the canvas and we want to run configure. The argument we need now is called yscroll command. This I want to set to scrollbar.set. Now if I run this, we can see the scroll bar is working and we can use it to move around in the canvas. This is working really well. And basically what you have to understand, let me draw this actually. We have a canvas, that is what we created here, and then we have a scroll bar. That is what we created here. Those two are going to influence each other. The scroll bar is going to give us one size of the canvas. And this we are doing with this command and canvas.yView. This picks one part of the scroll region. However, we also have to go the other way, that the canvas influences the scroll bar. And this happens down here, with the scroll command is equal to scrollbar.set. This tells the scroll bar how tall the widget is and which section we currently have. You need both of these parts to make all of this work efficiently. But once you have it, you are basically done. So let me run this again. And we basically have all we need for the basic scroll logic. There's one more thing that we can do. And that is, let me put it above the scroll bar, mouse wheel scrolling. For that, I want to get my canvas again, and I want to bind an event. The event I want to look for is called mouse wheel. Be careful here, the W has to be uppercase. Once we're doing that, I want to call a function. And this could just be a lambda function. Don't forget the event here. And for now, let me just print the event itself. Now, if I'm over the canvas with my mouse and use the scroll wheel, we get an event that we can work with. On this event, what I care about is this delta. If I move my mouse wheel away from me, this is a positive number. If I move it towards me, this is a negative number. I think it is always 120, but your results may vary. Depends on your mouse and your operating system, I think, but the number itself here isn't really that important. The way you are going to use it is by targeting the canvas and then calling the yView_scroll method. This one tells the canvas to scroll in a certain direction. And for this, we need two arguments. We need the amount and we need the units. The units is kind of weird. You basically need a string that is called units, and you never use anything else. So just always pass units in there. The amount is the much more important bit. For example, in here, I could simply add 20. Although this might be a bit large. If I now run this, and I use my mouse as a scroll wheel, we are scrolling quite a bit, although this only works one way. In my case, what I want to do, I want to get the event, I want to get the delta, and I want to divide this by 60. Remember here, event delta was either positive or negative 120. If I divide this by 60, I am getting 2. Which seems like a reasonable number, but just play around with this, whatever feels good is fine here. However, now we need one more thing. If I run this again, and I use scrolling, we are getting an error. And that is not actually the error I was expecting, because I had a typo. Now let me try this again. If I now use the scroll wheel, we get expected an integer, but got a floating point number. Basically, what you have to understand here is that tkinter for the scroll always wants to have an integer. So now if I run this again, I can use scrolling, and now this works perfectly fine with my mouse wheel. If you want to change the direction of the scrolling, you would just add a negative here. Depending on what operating system you are used to, you probably know different scrolling behaviors. For some people, if you scroll away from you on the mouse wheel, you want to go up, other people want to go down. I prefer that if I scroll towards myself, I am scrolling down, and if I scroll away from me, I'm going up. But this is a choice you have to make. But with that, we have all of the basics of using a scroll wheel to move along a widget. It really isn't that difficult. So with that, I want to add an exercise. I want you guys to create a horizontal scroll bar, and this one should be at the bottom, and with that, you are scrolling left and right on the canvas. On top of that, I want you guys to add one more event that the user can scroll left and right by holding down Control and the mouse wheel. Control or Command if you're on a Mac. Pause the video now and try to figure this one out yourself. First of all, I have to create a new scroll bar. Let me call it the scroll bar bottom. This is going to be TTK and scroll bar. The parent is going to be the window, and orient for this one is going to be horizontal. Although, since this is the default argument, you could just ignore it entirely. Let me place this one right away. I want to get this scroll bar and use the place method. For this one, I want to have relative x being 0 and relative y being 1. On top of that, I want to have the relative width being 1, and the anchor should be the southwest. Let's run the entire thing. And something definitely went wrong. I see, this shouldn't be scroll bar, this should be scroll bar bottom. Now if I run this, this is looking much better. All the way to the bottom now, we have another scroll bar. There is a tiny overlap between the two scroll bars down here. And for an actual app, you would want to take care of this, but in my case, I'm not worrying too much about it. With that, let's work on the functionality. We need a command argument, and this command argument we have seen here before. We still want the canvas, except now we don't want Y view, instead we want to have X view. I can already run the entire thing. Click on the scroll bar. You can't really see it, at least on the scroll bar, but in the canvas you can see we can go left and right. To make it visible in the scroll bar, I want to have the canvas and I want to run configure. Now, instead of Y scroll command, I want to have X scroll command. And for this, I want to have my scroll bar.bottom and use the set method. With that, I should basically be done. Now I can use the scroll bar on the horizontal axis. The vertical one still works perfectly fine, and this is looking really good. Finally, I want to cover the second part of the exercise. Let me move it below, because in here, I want to have canvas.bind. And I think the only difficult part was to figure out how to combine the control or command with the mouse wheel. On Windows, this would be control and mouse wheel. I believe on macOS it's actually the same keyword, but let me know if that's wrong, and then I'll help you. Next up, we have to call a lambda function, or well, some kind of function, but lambda is best here. I guess I can just copy the entire thing. I want to have a lambda function. For this one, we need an event, and then we have to call canvas and not yView, but xView and scroll. The other arguments, though, can stay identical. With that, we should be done. Let's run this. And now I can use my mouse wheel to go up and down, and if I hold Control, I'm going left and right. This is working quite well. And this is going to cover all of the basics of scroll bars, at least for the canvas. With that, I want to comment out all of this stuff, because there are two more widgets that I do want to cover. The first one is the text widget. This we create, let me store it in a variable, tk.text. The master is going to be a window, and I want to pack this right away. Text.pack with expand being true, and fill is going to be both. If I run this now, we have a text box. I can type in this, but other than that, we have no scroll bar. To make a scroll bar work, I want to add some content to this text box. This I can do with a for loop for I in range. Let's go from 1 to 200. These numbers I want to use with text.insert. And now I need two arguments. I need a position, or rather a start index, and then I need some text that I actually want to write. The text is the easier bit. I just want to have an f string that says text with the current index, so I. The index itself is going to be the starting position. I already talked about it, but basically in here, tkinter expects something like 1.0, with 1 being the starting line and 0 being the character on that line. Since we do have the numbers from 1 to 200, we can simply turn this into an f string and put this as I. Now if I run this, we get a whole bunch of numbers. That's a good start, although I do want to have some line breaks. Those we create with a slash and the letter n. Now if I run this, this is looking much cleaner. We can already scroll around here by simply using the mouse wheel, so this is the default behavior, although we don't have a scroll bar. But this we can add quite easily. Afterwards, I want to have another scroll bar, let me call it scroll text. And this is going to work basically identical compared to the canvas. In fact, I could simply copy all of the code here and paste it here. If I comment it out, I want to rename scroll bar in all of the places to scroll bar text. And let's go through it step by step. First of all, for the scroll bar, we are creating it, we are setting it to the window, we have an orientation, and then we have the command. Right now, the command is for the canvas. Instead, this one should be for the text. Other than that, the text widget also has a yView method, so we can leave this one as it is. Next up, we have to tell the scroll bar that it is being set by the text widget. For that, I want to get rid of the canvas and replace it with text. For this one, I want to have configure, then the yscroll command. And now I want to set scroll bar text.set. That's all we need here. Finally, I have to place the scroll bar itself. And I want to have this one all the way on the right, which is what I already have here. So if I run the code now, we have a scroll bar. If you understood this for the canvas, this one should be fairly straightforward, which means I can comment out all of this and then cover the final one, tree view. For this one, I have quite a few lines already. Let me just paste them in and uncomment them. I am creating a table, and this table has two headings. We have one for the first name and one for the last name. Then I have a bunch of random first names and a bunch of random last names. Then I'm creating a for loop that creates 100 items that I'm inserting into the table. Finally, I am placing or packing the entire table. So if I run this, we have a table. I already covered treeview in quite a bit of detail, so check that bit if you're confused about all of this. It shouldn't be too difficult. Once I have that, I can simply, once again, copy the scroll bar from up here, paste it in here, and remove the comment. And let's go through this step by step, I guess. First of all, we have to create the scroll bar widget. And this one I'm going to call scroll bar table. This we create with ttk.scrollbar, the parent is the window, and the orientation should be vertical. Next up, for the command, I don't want to have text.yview, I want to have table.yview. That's the name of the widget we just created, or at least the variable we are storing it in. Next up, we have to configure the scroll bar itself. For that, I want to have the table, and this one has the configure yscroll command with scroll bar, table, and set. This is going to set the position of the scroll bar itself. Or well, the position and the size. Finally, I want to get scroll bar.table and place it on the window. For this, I already have all of the arguments here, so if I run this now, we have a scroll bar for this table as well. And that is it. The really important part here is that you understand how to use scroll bars with the canvas, because this is the one you are actually going to use quite a bit. But it's generally a good idea to understand all of them. Although I think if you understand one of them, you understand them all.